Dead Space 2008, made by a company whom EA has either absorbed or completely ruined as they're known for. You can Google EA killing companies and you'll get quite some lists.
Forget everything you think you know about Resident Evil.
At the time, Resident Evil 4 was the hottest shit ever for a long while, even years after its initial release. So I guess banking on the popularity of RE4's third-person shooter style, they made Dead Space, and it's fucking good. Thankfully, the game didn't just become Resident Evil 4 but in space. The PC port of this is pure ass and needs quite a bit of tweaking from your graphics card's control panel or whatever similar, and I think some patches too. Without tweaks and mods, it's filled with game-breaking bugs, general mouse problems, lots of stuff. However, some of the bugs can be really funny, but I don't think it's worth going vanilla just for that.
I can pinpoint the exact moment you died.
I had a bug of sorts where the girlfriend kept dying because she kept falling through the floor. It took me an hour to finally fix it after I eventually tried to verify integrity of game files through Steam. As it turns out, I was missing 8 megabytes of files, so it downloaded them and I could finally progress the game. I googled for an hour to see if anyone had a similar problem, but I saw no results, so I'm assuming I'm the only one ever that's had this issue. And because it was just missing files, it might technically not be a bug? Don't know. I played this on Impossible difficulty recently, the hardest difficulty setting, because I've never before, and I wanted to see how much better this game was on that difficulty. It's quite good, definitely made you focus more on the survival aspect with the resource management and all that. However, just like many games I've played with resource management, I ended up having too many resources by the end of the playthrough because I'm always trying to be as efficient as possible, afraid I'd have too little of everything. Unfortunately, the only way to unlock impossible difficulty is to beat the game first. On PC though, you can just go to a certain file and change a 0 into a 1 to get it. I already beat the game way back, and I was kind of lucky enough for the Steam Cloud thing to save my files from before 2015, and even the fan patches, all from before I got this computer I'm currently on. The story is that you, Isaac Clarke, an engineer, and your maintenance crew were to just go on a big spaceship and fix stuff.
We're here to fix their ship, not the other way around.
They crash land on it, alien monsters attack, and then you run around actually fixing stuff, but only because you want to get the hell out of that hellhole. You learn some cool backstories and lore here and there through audio, video, and text logs, usually about the monsters and the Space Cult's involvement in the incident. You eventually learn early on in the game through one of the text logs that they're called necromorphs, or at least that's what the doctor or whatever is calling them, so that became the official name everyone uses for these things, I guess. They're pretty cool enemies and come in lots of flavors. They're all just reanimated corpses or body parts turned into horrific monsters. Zombies, if you will. Just about every necromorph in the game was a person, including the Bat Things, which I've recently learned is a human torso and its legs. Most of the game is you going from point A to B all the time, being told what to do and where to go by the various characters in the game, usually just finding and fixing things, since Isaac is an engineer, I guess. Characters go on and on about shit being fucked, and then all of a sudden they go, okay, whatever, Isaac, go here and fix or get this for me now. And then they hang up. Most of the tasks themselves aren't really exciting either until enemies attack. At least the environment around you is interesting enough as a distraction of sorts. With Isaac not talking, it's hard for me to follow along or care for the story. Anytime characters talk to Isaac, a lot of what they say just flies by me, especially since Isaac doesn't even react to most any of their dialogue. What I do know is that there's a piece of rock that's making everyone insane, including Isaac, and said rock is also somehow making the necromorphs. It makes one of the plot twists way too predictable. At least the lore and what happened stuff is good. Before you even get a gun, they tell you to cut off the alien limbs to kill them. They mentioned the limb cutting like 3 times, which I guess is to get people out of the habit of going for headshots in regular shooters? Don't know.
Anything like that. Cut them apart.
They give you the only weapon you need throughout the entire game too for that job, the plasma cutter. It's not a one-shot, one-sever weapon unless you're on easy mode maybe, but each single shot staggers to let you keep aiming at the same limb more easily. There are several other weapons too, but it's unfortunately ill-advised to keep more than 1 or 2 weapons because the drop rate for their ammo is tied to what guns you have. So if you only have the plasma cutter, your starting weapon, you're only going to be getting ammo for that most of the time. Which is a good weapon anyway because it's really fucking strong. I bought the assault rifle in the game, the pulse rifle, mainly for the swarming little fucks that can overwhelm you if you let them get too close. They're not the kind of things that the plasma cutter is good for. I don't actually know how good most of the weapons are. What I do know is that the flamethrower sucks, if only because it doesn't work within the space vacuum sections, although apparently it's technically supposed to, because of some science shit. So it's apparently also a developer oversight of sorts, as the flamethrower starts working with no oxygen in the later games. You also get a sub-weapon of sorts, the stasis. It's used to slow down all motion of anything it touches temporarily. It's real fun to use and is especially useful for conserving ammo or to give yourself some breathing room. Shooting off limbs is really easy, especially with a mouse. However, part of the challenge comes from the fact that necromorphs can overwhelm you, depending on the situation. Sudden ambushes, sheer numbers, lack of oxygen, whatever. For all that, you'll need to be a fast shot, have decent aim, have a good sense of your surroundings, have wise upgrade investments, and a good sense of resource management. This isn't the kind of survival horror game where you can just leave enemies alone to save resources. You absolutely have to kill almost every necromorph you see. I don't actually know or remember why shooting limbs off necromorphs kills them lore-wise. I saw mention on a forum somewhere that it's more like they just give up than actually die. In terms of gameplay, you know they're dead when they start ragdolling. As a survival horror, it's pretty alright. It's not the scariest game ever, but it does make good use of its lighting to create a really spooky atmosphere for its horror, to the point that it's easy to forget that the game's from 2008. The jump scares can be pretty good, but it does sometimes feel like it relies too heavily on them for the horror. Although I'm actually pretty fine with the jump scares here, if just because I find them more to be like fun surprises that can make you flinch or jump than actually terrify you. Kinda like a haunted house attraction. Then again, games that aren't slow-paced and or have a paranormal, supernatural theme don't really scare me that much anyway. As for the survival part, if you're not constantly blasting and missing your shots, the resource management is pretty lenient, as I've learned firsthand from playing through the hardest difficulty setting. It really does lean more towards an action shooter than a survival game, which is fine, the shooting's often real fun. Dead Space is a good fucking game. It's got fun scares, good shooting, nice tension. The second game improves a fuck ton on the game mechanics and has loads more theatrics, and its PC version is actually properly optimized. It's the better game overall. However, all those theatrics and improved mechanics sacrifice a lot of both the survival and horror part of the genre. That game's more reliant on jump scares and shock moments for the horror, so I guess if you're not into those things, that game's the scarier one. I forgot to mention about this game's kinesis and melee stuff, but those aren't really fun to use until Dead Space 2 anyway. They're part of what make that game a lot more faster paced. The slower paced nature of Dead Space 1 makes itself just a bit unique enough from the second game. To me, at least. It's probably strongly recommended to get any of the console versions for this game if you don't want to deal with the graphical tweaking. All you'll really miss out on is the 60+ FPS gameplay. I don't think this game needed a remake, an overpriced one at that. It just needs some proper fixing up, a remaster if you will, and not just some lazy port or re-release either.